Welcome to Coffee Talk at P&W Components. I'm Rosemary, Marketing Program Manager, and I'm based here in sunny Portland, Oregon.
It looks very sunny there.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Todd, who are you and why should people care about what we're talking about today?
It's a great question. I'm Todd Ford. I am Director of Product at P&W. I'm located in less beautiful Santa Cruz, California right now, where it kind of looks like the P&W because it's just dumping rain. But yeah, that's me.
You guys both have coffee pots over there. What am I doing?
Hey, it's all about the French press.
This is like my 6th cup today. So
holy shit.
Nice.
DJ, who are you? What are you doing here?
I am TJ. I do product and project management at P&W. Coming up on 5 years at P&W. It's been awesome. So very, very fortunate to be here. I am currently based in sunny Asheville, North Carolina.
Well, thanks for getting up early and having coffee with me. Today, we're going to talk about our favorite sweetheart since it's Valentine's Day and everybody loves the Loam. I have so many questions for you guys about how we made this bar. And so yeah, let's get into it. I want to know, why would we make a carbon handlebar when we already had the range and everybody loved it so much? Why did we choose carbon?
We wanted to really highlight what you can do with carbon. Again, we've been a bit of an expert when it comes to making aluminum handlebars. We know how they operate. We know what they do well. And what we really wanted to do with a carbon bar was kind of take our knowledge of geo and of that material and then translate it into this new carbon bar. So we really were focused on what can we do to make a proper, like, high performance mountain bike bar that's not going to break the bank too.
Compared to what our competitors were doing, what were we trying to improve upon?
We really wanted to make a bar that's going to be compliant and really predictable. Our main objectives were compliance, steering, handling, essentially.
All right, so let's talk about the scientific process. How were our competitors' bars tested and compared? How did that help us figure out what we could do to take this to the next level?
Yeah, so we did our best to make data-driven decisions as much as we could in the development process. So first, that involved doing competitor ride testing. So we rode 6 different bars in 3 different locations, and we kept all the other variables the same. So bikes, grips, tires, all the contact points on the bikes were the same. So by doing that, we got really comfortable and really confident in kind of speaking to the different riding characteristics of the different handlebars. So that was the first step in the process, was just kind of collecting that initial competitor data.
So your job was to just ride your bike over and over and over again on the same trails?
Yeah, yep.
God,
Exactly.
you guys have it so rough.
Rosemary, it's a tough job. Okay?
My leg's not really sore.
It was pretty interesting, to TJ's point. Like we made it very strict of, you ride the same exact trail, you ride the exact same setup. Don't change your tire pressures, don't change your suspension setup. Nothing changes except for the handlebar. So we were literally doing laps. You'd finish a run, swap your handlebar out, go up, do it again. And it was really interesting doing the back-to-back like that, because you can really start to notice nuances of each and every bar as you're doing it. It was really cool.
For science, all for science, you guys.
Mm-hmm.
So we have this really cool Databas graph that you guys put some data into in our wonderful art department, pulled together, that shows where we test compared to our competitors. Could you guys pull that up and sort of explain it to us? Because I feel like it's one of those things that just might look like we're tooting our own horn, but I know that it is data-based. So I just want to hear what the deal is with this cute little graph we made.
It is cute.
Basically what happened was we gathered all this different subjective data, and we all gathered our feelings on the different handlebars. Some were a little bit softer, some were more comfortable, some were, really rigid, and etc. So how do you quantify like how the bar feels? And so we did different deflection testing on all the bars that we rode. And so we actually deflected the handlebars vertically. So if you can imagine the handlebars in a stem, we measured how far they bend up and down exactly.
Okay.
And we rotated them forward 90 degrees, and then we literally just hung a weight on the end of the bar and measured how far they deflect horizontally. So by doing that, we were able to collect actual data, millimeters of deflection, vertically and horizontally. And if you can imagine, as a bar's deflecting horizontally while you're riding, it leads to kind of an unpredictable ride feel, because if you're hitting bumps and you're going around a corner very quickly, it's very bumpy. Your wheel could actually be deflecting where you're pointing the bars to the right, and the wheel isn't necessarily pointing exactly where you're aiming. So the horizontal deflection we associated with predictability, and then the vertical deflection we associated with comfort. So as you can imagine, if the bar is deflecting slightly up and down, that can create a really comfortable ride or a really rigid ride. So we found that a lot of our competitors had bars that deflected too much horizontally and maybe not enough vertically. So what we were able to do was basically create a bar that deflects our preferred amount of vertical distance and then also horizontal. And that's kind of what you see in that green area is the P&W bar. It's increased comfort and increased predictability by basically reducing the horizontal compliance and then increasing the vertical compliance compared to competitors.
How did we get the deflection data that's in this data visualization?
So once we determined that we really wanted to figure out this whole vertical versus horizontal compliance deflection deal, we worked with our engineer to create a pretty sweet little test rig. Basically, as TJ said earlier, we bend the bar at with a certain amount of weight at a certain location on the bar, both vertically and horizontally, and that determines where our values were. So we did that with all of our competitor bars. Then once we got our sample bars, we started doing that as well, just to validate that the bars perform in the way that we wanted it to. It was really cool, and it's a pretty unique feature to have this kind of test protocol now that we have. We actually have a rig right in our warehouse now, so we actually can do the testing anytime we want with any bars that we want. So we're literally cut a bar to 760, see how it performs. Any bar that comes in, we can test it and see what's going on with it. So it's really cool. It's a pretty proprietary test in that we kind of developed it. And again, it's been pretty amazing how the testing in the lab really correlates to what we saw in real life. It was really funny when just a little anecdote, when we got our first samples of the bars, we actually tested two different versions of it. Basically what we were doing is we were modifying the shape and orientation of the CBD inside. So we wanted to see, how it was operating, what it was doing, and if we could tell the difference. So we did some blind testing with it. We got two different versions of the bar. We did not know which one was which. We just tested it, wrote it, and then came back to our engineer and we're like, this is what we're feeling, this one compared to this one. And it was a wild call. He's like, wow, you guys got it right. Like, that's exactly what we saw in the lab. It's doing exactly what you're saying. So again, it just kind of validated that, what we're feeling and what we're doing in testing actually does fit. It makes sense. So it's been really cool.
That's awesome. It's so fun that we have our own rig now too.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. We're just bending everything now. It's kind of weird, but
bending everything.
I want to just add to Todd's story just now. We actually got quite a few of those samples, the two different versions, and we shipped them all over the world. We had someone in Arkansas riding it. We had someone in the UK riding it. We had them all over the US, and everyone that actually rode the two different versions. And like Todd said, our engineer told us before we started testing those versions that one of them was a little bit closer to our kind of ideal deflection numbers. Mm-hmm. And everyone that rode the bars agreed that one of them felt a little bit better than the other. And that matched what our engineer told us was going to be like a little bit closer to our ideal numbers. So like Todd said, it just really confirmed that like all of our feelings in the ride testing matched the data. And like, that was a very exciting moment.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Major moment.
Mm-hmm.
It was a breakthrough.
Yeah.
Putting data to the way that the bars felt, and proving that what you were feeling is correct. I wish I could like do that in my daily life. Like, I wish there was data for my daily feelings.
It was really kind of a pragmatic approach. Like, what do we love about competitors, and how can we, and what do we not like, and then how can we change our bar to get the best of both worlds?
Yes, that's a really good segue into my next question for you. So once you had tested all the competitors' bars, how did we figure out how to get to this point on this graph? Like, how did we find this point of comfort and predictability once you had the tests done?
Well, it was like we were saying, like it was pretty surprising how much it was like a one-to-one of what we're feeling on the trail and how we can correlate that exactly to our deflection data. And basically, we just took that information to create our targets. So we knew in this scenario, this bar felt really good here. Going through a rock garden or a chunky section, we really liked the way that it felt. But when we hit this hard G out or this like crash berm, the front end was all over the place. We don't like that. But on this other bar, we really like the way that that felt in this like corner or something. So we could basically take the numbers and say, all right, we like that much deflection vertically. We like that much horizontally. How do we figure this out? So we brought that to our engineer, and as he built out the 3D model for the bar, he was actually able to use what's called FEA analysis to basically on the computer apply a force and see how the bar is going to bend. So we used those targets to try to get that deflection, and that's how we created our internal layup structure. To kind of hit exactly where those targets are going to be, both vertically and horizontally in real life.
Then at that point, is that when our patent pending CBD layup was developed? What is CBD? What's inside here that makes this so special?
Yeah, so CBD is our compliant bore design. And basically what we did is we optimized the wall thickness of the handlebar to deflect exactly how we wanted it to. So in doing that, we were able to place different carbon sheets in different areas of the bar. We were even able to determine the orientation of those carbon sheets to predetermine the wall thickness in the handlebar. So it's a variable wall thickness bar, and basically that is the compliant bore design.
And you've seen other brands kind of do similar where they do an external shaping. There's some out there that have like a interesting ovalized shape on the outside of the bar, which they use to kind of create this compliant design. With ours, everything's internal, and a big piece of that is how we are able to really hold tolerances for our wall thicknesses inside the bar. That really allows us to do the CBD technology.
How do you get it to be consistent so that you can know that the wall thickness is where you want it to be and it's all laying correctly? We
have partnered with a very fantastic manufacturer, and they use what's called EPS molding. It's a relatively new to the bike industry form of carbon layup design. Basically, when you lay up a carbon anything, what you do is you have an internal mold structure that you then lay your layers of carbon on top of. You put it inside a gigantic mold, put it in an oven, you bake it, and that's how you create a carbon anything. What EPS molding is it's this kind of like foam internal mold that you're wrapping around. And then when you apply heat to it, it actually expands and creates a ton of pressure inside. So as it's baking inside the oven, you have this internal pressure going up against the walls inside the bar, and then obviously your big metal tool that it's sitting in. So it's compressing those carbon exactly where you want it in the exact orientation that you want it, which allows us to have super tight tolerances for our wall thicknesses and really land our carbon where we want it to be. If you've ever seen the inside of like a carbon fiber frame, sometimes it looks like strands of hair and kind of all gunky and shitty looking. Oops. But yeah, so basically the EPS molding process really allows us to do CBD properly and really refine and hit the exact numbers that we're looking for our compliance.
Awesome. That is so cool. I think that was the best explanation of EPS molding I've heard so far. And we've been talking about this for 6 months now. That was awesome. Thank you, Todd. All right. So I know that we've already touched on this a little bit, but what type of carbon did we use for the Loam bar, and why did we choose that carbon?
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned earlier, but we used a unidirectional carbon, and by using that type of carbon, we were basically able to, it helped us determine how the bar would actually ride. So using FEA analysis and using that type of carbon, we can place the carbon sheets in very specific locations on the bar that helps us determine the thickness of the bar in that location, but also depending on which direction the carbon fibers are facing, that also kind of determines how the bar will deflect as well. So by using unidirectional carbon, we were really able to fine tune how the bar rides.
The other really cool thing, again, with our fantastic manufacturing partner is their ability to actually lay up carbon. Often with carbon manufacturers, they just bring in a pre-preg, which is a pre-impregnated carbon, meaning it already has resin kind of baked into it. But with our vendor that we work with, they can lay up their own carbon. They literally take these huge rolls of carbon fibers that are on like reels. They can shoot it through this machine, pick exactly which carbon they want, and then they can actually pre-preg it right there. So they can choose the carbon that they want, the resins that they want, everything. So it's pretty amazing that we have this ability to really fine tune exactly what carbon we want for the bar and really, again, nail exactly what we want the bar to do performance-wise. It's really, really cool.
One note, just to add about that is once carbon is impregnated with the resin, it has a pretty short shelf life. So for our factory to be able to do that on an as needed basis, it just ensures that we're always using really high quality carbon that's, ripe and it's not going to go bad or anything like that. So it's really nice factory to work with.
You ever see those like old fashioned diners that are like baked on premises? They make that claim about pies. Well, we have carbon baked on premises.
Yeah.
Our carbon is essentially Krispy Kreme with the donut sign on. They are fresh, ready to go.
That's exactly it.
That's great. That's a great analogy.
Another thing I will mention, while it is a full unidirectional carbon bar, at the very ends of the bars, it's actually a 3K weave. And we did that on purpose so that when you cut your bar down, if you want to trim it down, because it's an 800, if you want to go down to like 740, 760, whatever, when you cut it, because it's a 3K weave there, it won't shard or anything. It'll actually create a cleaner cut. So you just less risk of shards of carbon and stuff.
And now we have this whole other side of manufacturing a carbon bar that I know you guys take really seriously, and that some, average consumers are going to have apprehensions about riding a carbon fiber handlebar going down gnarly terrain. So what can you guys tell me about the strength testing that we did for the Loam Carbon Bar? Like, how do we know that it's safe to huck yourself off some scary shit with this handlebar?
After doing some more ride testing on some somewhat sketchy bars, we agreed that maybe we should test this, make sure that it's going to be strong enough. So we really, there is some testing protocol within the bike industry. It's called ISO 4210 is the kind of industry standard for all bike testing. And then they have specific testing associated to handlebars. So that's like step one. But to be honest, you don't even have to do that. Anyone can make a handlebar and they don't technically have to test it to the ISO standard, which is terrifying. You can bring it out and whatever, it's out there. We were not going to do that. So what we decided is, on top of the standard ISO testing, we actually worked with another third-party lab called EFBE. They are a pretty big test house. They have testing facilities all over the world, and they have developed their own level of testing that's basically in addition to ISO. So there's the ISO test, and then EFBE has several categories that go above ISO, depending on what your goal is, what your category is for your handlebar. So for us, what we decided is we wanted this thing to be super strong. We wanted to make sure there was no issues. So we tested it to what they call their category 5 level, which is for downhill standard and ENTB. So it's their highest standard as far as testing goes. The way you do the test, it's a fatigue test and a max load test. So basically they run, I don't know how many cycles, a bunch of cycles on the bar, make sure that it doesn't crack or anything. And then they run a max load. After doing the fatigue test, they run a max load test as well, which our bars passed with no issue, which was very cool.
Awesome. I always love seeing those test rigs in person. I would love to see that. Well, thanks for having coffee with me, you guys. Is there anything else about the Loam Carbon Bar that's unique that you guys want to talk about or let people know that maybe we don't necessarily hammer home in our marketing materials, but you guys know because you were there every step of the way?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the packaging real quick. We spent a lot of time on the packaging. We really wanted a recyclable option that would reduce the amount of cardboard that we currently use. So we've always been a plastic-free company, or we've always strived to be plastic-free where we can. And so we've used cardboard, but then the question came, like, how do we use even less cardboard? So we were talking for a long time about using some kind of like custom paper envelope or cardboard envelope that would reduce the amount of cardboard from a box to an envelope. But we did a lot of research and we found out that 95% of the shipments that we send out for handlebars also include another product. So we're putting the handlebar in the box inside another box with the other product. So at that point, we realized it just makes more sense to create what we decided was a compostable bag. So now every Loam bar that goes out goes into a master shipping box, but we can assume that over 90% of those bars will ship with something else as well. So the really cool thing about the compostable bag is it's backyard recyclable and it's backyard compostable. And yeah, you can put it right in your green waste bin or your compost. And
so it's not one of those fake compostable bags that says it's compostable.
It's not fake compostable, and it's not industrial compostable as well. So there are industrial compostable bags out there that if they go into a landfill, it still can take hundreds of years to decompose. So this one, you can put it right in your compost bin and it'll decompose all by itself.
Has anyone tested that yet?
Oh yeah. I have a couple of them in my compost bin, and after a few months, it's hard to tell what's what in there when you're digging around with a shovel, but there's not much left in there. Yeah.
That's so awesome. That's very cool.
Another thing I'll mention, we did a little bit of different shaping externally too, compared to our range bar. We actually have like the center bar bore area where the stem clamps is quite a bit longer on this one. That's because there's a lot of new stems coming out that are quite a bit wider. And also, you know, if you have an e-bike, you've got a display you need to clamp on there if you want to clamp a light or anything. So there's a decent amount of real estate there to make sure you can clamp all your little doodads and accessories onto your bars, and still plenty of room for it.
We do offer decals as well. So you can choose from a variety of colors. If you go from a red bike to a blue bike, or, you know, if you just get sick of your red decals and you want to go to green, that's an option as well. So with the decal kit, there's one extra decal for each P&W logo, to where if you mess up or if it gets scuffed, you know, you can replace it. But just offers really easy, customizable appearance basically for the handlebar.
Well, thanks for having coffee with me, guys.
I have to go make another one now. So
yeah, I know. I'm going to do the same.
Yes.
All right. See you later.
Cool.
Yeah.
Bye.